My family has left me with a legacy. It's not so much a physical thing. Unfortunately for my kids, there are no stocks and bonds, no manor house in England somewhere. And yet our legacy is real. It has more to do with faith and philosophy and values. And my family's legacy isn't always good. But I feel all right sharing that with you because your family has a legacy too, with both good and bad within it, as does our nation, as do the people of the Bible who first experienced God's love and mercy. But more on that in a bit. First, a story that describes a part of my family's legacy. When my father announced my engagement to Jay, his mother was shocked. She was sure that I, at the advanced age of 25, was far too old to be married. And that wasn't the worst of it. See, I had gone to graduate school, and my grandmother worried about what sort of man would deign to marry a woman with so much education. See, my grandmother had grown up in northern Minnesota, and she knew the social order. Because my family identified as British, I've heard there was a picture of Queen Victoria in my grandmother's house. My grandparents were sure that these were the best kind of people. Norwegians were okay. They weren't quite as good as Germans. Catholics were suspect. My great-aunt Kate, the first woman in my family to go to college, had also waited until she was older to get married. And she happened to settle for John, or as he was known in the family, the dumb Swede. Kate had only gone to secretarial college, and I had gone to graduate school in divinity, which was so much worse as far as my grandmother was concerned. Perhaps my grandmother reasoned I wouldn't even be able to find a Swede for a husband. So she was left with the unthinkable. Near our family farm, there were the Red Lake and Leech Lake reservations. Could it be? My grandmother tentatively asked my father, "Is Katie going to marry an Indian?" And since Jay's father was born in India, my father just couldn't help himself. He turned to her and said, "Why, yes, she is." It's a funny story. It's a horrible story. It's filled with stereotypes and innuendo, and perhaps even a little guilt for my own family's role in usurping native land. There might be something good here too, although we have to dig a bit to find it. To be clear, I don't fault my grandmother. She came from another time and place, and I never saw her treat anyone badly. I loved her very much, and she loved me too. And more than that, on this Sunday before Thanksgiving, it seems important to acknowledge that her story is my story, and that my family legacy is complex, as is yours, as are the legacies of our nation and our biblical ancestors. In today's gospel reading, we hear about the aftermath of the feeding of the 5,000. You remember that story. How when the people were stranded in the wilderness, Jesus fed 5,000 men, plus women and children too, with just a few loaves and some fish. I think it's safe to say that the disciples had never encountered anything like it in their whole lives. But of course, they had more than just their own personal lives to reflect back on. The disciples had their own legacy. When the Hebrew people were stranded in the wilderness, they recall, Moses gave them manna to eat. It's so simple and so good. But like all family legacies, Jesus points out how complex things really are. Jesus says it wasn't Moses who fed the people, but rather it was God. And it wasn't simply bread that nourished the body that the people needed, but bread that nourished souls. In other words, it's not just bread from heaven that God will provide, the bread that's here today and gone tomorrow, but the bread of heaven, who is Jesus himself, who brings eternal life. These subtle word choices prick our ears to listen for something more. This bread, Jesus says, will be for whoever comes to him and whoever believes. Could there be more to their legacy? Our nation's Thanksgiving story seems so simple and so good. In elementary school, we learned how Native Americans welcomed those pilgrims who fled persecution to to make a new home in New England. That first Thanksgiving, we are told, was a joint celebration of the harvest brought in by the Pilgrims with the Native Americans' help. It seems so simple and so good. But just scratch the surface and we find there's more to the story. The Pilgrims brought not only their faith, but also guns and germs. Native peoples resorted to violence when their land was taken, and Europeans responded. The first written record of Thanksgiving isn't a peaceful meal celebrating a harvest, but a Puritan celebration of the destruction of a native village. What then are we to say about our national legacy when we pass the turkey? Should we just forget this story altogether? Or could there be more to the legacy? I think our Bible readings show a way. In our first reading from the book of Deuteronomy, Moses tells the Hebrew people how to thank God once they enter the Promised Land. This chapter is part of a longer list of other laws Moses gives them. Moses commands the people not to take an unjust loan. They are not to withhold wages from day laborers. The people must give justice to resident aliens, orphans, and widows. Moses commands that food be left unharvested in the fields, so that the poor might have something to eat. Moses goes on urging that widows, orphans, foreigners, and those in need be remembered by the people in God's name. I mention this because it sets the expectation for what will come. In our Inspired series this fall, we read about the Hebrew people's conquest of the Promised Land. Author Rachel Evans reminded us that this land was home to other peoples before the Hebrew people came. In the Bible, we read about how nations were destroyed, homes looted, even children killed in God's name. Evans wondered with us what kind of legacy this might be, even as she urged us not to set these stories aside. This week's reading offers a helpful vision. This morning we heard Moses remind the people that they were once aliens in a strange land. They themselves were enslaved, afflicted, oppressed. As the people prepared to enter a new land, Moses tells them God wants them to do better. Not only are the Hebrew people to give thanks to God in words, but they are to show that thanks in deeds. The people are commanded to celebrate not just with their own kind, but with foreigners and the aliens who reside among them. Though through Moses, God lets the people know God's blessings are big enough for all. Everyone can give thanks. This is the legacy God intends for his people and for us. Can we hear it even knowing the rest of the story? I don't think we need to ignore or erase history to find the goodness of our legacy. Perhaps fully entering into these stories makes us just that much more observant, just that much more deliberate, just that much more bent on being the people who think about what we do in God's name. Knowing our national legacy of mistreating Native peoples, can we look at the Thanksgiving story as not colonial history, but as a future ideal worth working toward? Can we see in this story the American value of diversity, generosity, and inclusion, and give thanks for that? Because these are our legacy too. Indeed, we know that the Hebrew people did not live out Moses' command. When they entered the Promised Land, there would be violence instead of thanksgiving. And yet, God wasn't done with his people. In Jesus Christ, God shows another way. Rachel Evans writes that Jesus proves God would rather die by violence than commit it. In the cross and through Jesus' love, there is reason to hope. Jesus says that the bread from heaven, his own broken body and blood given to us in Holy Communion, is not just for a select few, but for whoever might come. Jesus would redeem us all, and our broken legacies too. I know it's true because I know something of your own family legacies. Legacies of addiction overcome by sobriety. Legacies of violence overcome by brave people willing to get help. Legacies of desperation overcome by hard work and opportunity. Legacies of intolerance overcome by examples of love. are struggling with even now, because you know there is hope there just below the surface. Vicar Carl reminded us a few weeks ago that when we are looking for hope, we need to look to the least. Who in our stories breaks unhealthy patterns? Who embodies resurrection's light? Who makes a way when there seems to be none? Those are the people to watch in our family legacies, even in my own. There she is, hiding in plain sight. That woman who was too old and too educated for anyone to love. My great Aunt Kate, the woman I was named for. Now, those of you who have been in my newly remodeled office have seen the sign of her presence in my life today. Next to the hymnals and below the bookshelves, her most treasured possession is on display. This is my great Aunt Kate's Underwood typewriter. She bought it with all of her savings so that she could go to school. But that's not all. You see, my great Aunt Kate loved this typewriter. It gave her opportunity, a livelihood, and a way to a better life. But when my father came of age, she loved him more. She knew he'd never be able to leave the farm unless he got an education. So my great Aunt Kate gave her typewriter to him. And my father went to college. And he went to grad school, too. He even became a college professor, which my grandmother never really understood. Sometimes she would call and tell him that there were good jobs opening up in the factory. He never faulted her. After all, she spoke her wisdom out of love. My grandmother wanted the best for her son and her grandchildren. And of course, because my father went to college, so did I, and my sister. And I hope one day my own children and my nephews will never stop learning, no matter what path their education may take. Learning and growing, of course, is part of our family legacy, even if it might mean that finding the right husband takes a little longer, even if his ancestors include Indians. God calls us on this Thanksgiving to be mindful of our legacies. As we share our stories, let us be tellers of truth and seekers of wisdom. Let us consider what is honorable, what is just, what is commendable, excellent, or worthy of praise. And where there is error or harm, let us find a new way. And in all things, let us give thanks to God who leads us in a legacy of love. Thanks be to God. Amen.